Hi. So in this video, we're gonna look at floats a little bit. So quickly, we're gonna create a quick website. So we're gonna have a header, right? And that header is going to have it's gonna have a logo. So we'll say logo, right? And then in there, we're gonna say that there's gonna be a search on the top, right? So we'll just say there's a div, and in there will be we'll just say there's a label. Label, and that label is going to say something like search, right? And then there's going to be an input, and that input is going to, there's going to be like a little button right next to that, so we'll just say button, right? And it's going to say search, okay? Something like that, right? And then in there, underneath that header, there's going to be we'll just say it's a div, right? And we'll give it that an ID equals content, content, right? And then there's, we'll just say a paragraph tag, and there's some content there, right? And then underneath that, there'll be a footer, right? And it says, I am a footer, right? We'll test that, and that gives us our the beginnings of what our website's going to be. So we're just going to focus on one specific piece here. So the first thing we want to do is, let's go here, we're going to create a style, and in that style we want the header, right, to have a background color of, we're just going to say CCCCCCC. So just like a light gray, right? So let's test that out, right? And that's what we have so far, right? So the first thing that we want to do is we want this search thing here. We don't want it there. We want it to move all the way over here to the right-hand side. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use float, right? So where is that? That's right here. We're going to say this here has an ID of, let's call this search container, right? So now when we go into our CSS, it's an ID, right? So if it's an ID, we want to use an ID selector of search container, add in your squiggly brackets, and then we'll use float right. Save that, test it, and now you'll notice that float went all the way to the right. However, it is not nearly where we want it to be. Okay? So what we need to do in that instance is actually bring this h1 and bring it underneath this div. And now when you test it, oops, test it here, now it's on the top. So a little bit closer, but not exactly what we need. The next thing we want to do is we want this to, although it is in the box, right, it's not centered in the box. So there's a few ways that you can do this. You can use some margins and kind of eyeball it or whatever. But one of the ways that you can do it is say, this really works if it's a fix. Like this particular one is always going to be the same height because there's going to be no word wrapping, or there's not going to be, it's not like dynamic content, and I don't know what size it is. I know that it's going to be, let's just say 100 pixels, right? Or we'll say 75 pixels, right? And what you can do here is you can say, for this h1, so we can say header, right? We can say header, header, and then do a descendant selector of h1, and you can say that this line height is going to be, say, 75 pixels, right? Now when I test this, so now I set that 75 pixel line height, and then what I could do is I can go to grab the same line height here and just add it to the search container. And now when I test this, there you go. Now it is aligned, right? A couple things I want to fix here. I don't like that there's this space over here on the left. I don't like that there's some space here on the right. There's two ways to do that. You can either add padding, but you'll see what's going to happen if I do that. So if I go here and I add padding, I say I'm going to have padding of like say 10, right? 10px. And now you'll notice that it actually made everything much larger and it kind of screwed everything up a little bit. So what you could do is you can just say padding and just add would you say padding left is that, and then padding right is that. And now if I test this, now you have a little bit of padding there, right? So that's a little bit better. Now, if you wanted to get rid of this white area over around, one quick way of fixing that is you can just say body and say margin equals 0. And now test that, and now you no longer have a margin. Your search is in there. However, this is squished up. So if you want to fix that, then you can say, so we have content here. You can just go here and say we have an ID of content, and we're going to add a padding of, we have 10 pixels, so we just say 10 pixels, right? And now everything should be pretty even, with the exception of this footer. So actually I want content and footer to have that padding as well, right? Full padding around. So now they're all good. So that's how you can use float to do this sort of thing. There's some other ways to do it. There's like everything. There's a million different ways to fix the same problem, but this is one of them.